The brands that scale fastest are those that have the best data and insights. But without strong data or a good data analyst, it's really hard for an e-commerce brand to get those sorts of insights. And this is actually where AI can be a huge and inexpensive help for a brand. That's why today I'm going to walk you through the right LLM to use for your data analysis, because there actually is a right one, and how to actually get it to propose the next best experiments to run, in this case focused on email overall. So as we dive in here, I want to first start with what's the best LLM to use for your data analysis. To do this, I actually went through the exercise already and I compared Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini. And I compared them across the same prompt and the same set of data. So I used 5,000 email campaigns specifically. So this will be email focused overall. Now, what you're going to notice with Claude, and this is the results that Claude showed here. What you're going to notice with Claude is a few things. One, Claude is really good at creative. So when it comes to copywriting, branding ideas, all that sort of stuff, Claude is far and away the best model. You can check out other videos I've done on this. I kind of prove it out in a few different ways, and I even walk you through how to use Claude for this. It's the best at creative. Unfortunately, Claude is not the best at data analysis. It's very good at reasoning, which is different. We can talk about that, but it's not very good at actually crunching the numbers and doing so accurately. So you can see the results here. So in this case, again, I gave it 5,000 campaigns. I asked it to analyze the last 3 months and give us specific metrics, these metrics in particular. So you can kind of see the numbers here, 1109, 921. Again, this is fake data to be clear. That's why the numbers are crazy big, at least on the revenue side. And then I went ahead and said, okay, Claude, verify this for me. Double check your math and make sure that it's all right. And it said, okay, great. And the numbers are all the same. So in this case, Claude is either consistently wrong about the numbers, or it's consistently right depending on where it started. So that's Claude. Now you're going to immediately begin to see the discrepancy here with ChatGPT. So with ChatGPT, you notice the numbers are different. 1195, average open rate's different, CTR is different, total revenue is different. You also notice, interestingly here too, the date range that it selected is different. Now, in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about 7 different tips that I'm going to give you that you can use today to immediately improve the data analysis quality from LLMs, from whatever AI you're using. So we're going to get to that, but I highlight that because this is one of those tips involves the date, this date aspect that we're seeing. So we're noticing the dates are different. But also I asked ChatGPT, hey, are you sure? And it was not so sure, right? It reran the numbers. Now suddenly the numbers are different enough, right? We just lost $100 million in revenue, kind of scary. No, sorry, not 100 million. We lost, a good amount of revenue, kind of scary. Our open rate changed a little bit. Our click-through rate changed. So not so sure, right? ChatGPT, is it right or is it wrong? You're going to start to see which one's actually the right one as we move over here into Gemini. Now, with Gemini, you're going to notice, I'm going to zoom out here for comparison actually. So you're going to start to notice the total campaigns are the same. The revenue numbers are the same. Now our click-through rate is a little bit different and our open rate is a little bit different, but already you're hopefully seeing what I said at the very beginning. Claude is not the best tool here, right? It is very off by comparison to ChatGPT and to Gemini. This is why we don't recommend using it for the data analysis side. Now, if we scroll down here, this is interesting. So with Claude specifically, as we scroll down, you also notice, again, I asked it to double check. You can say, oh yeah, I double checked it. In this case, it said, hey, look, here's the original numbers I came to and why. What I really liked is it then said, here's the actual math that I used for that, and here's some other ways that you could do it. So it actually recognized it was consistent with its math, and it also recognized that the numbers the way that it came to its conclusion might in fact be different than what we wanted. So I actually really liked how Claude did that. Excuse me, how Gemini did that. Now, one other thing to highlight really quickly here that actually is valuable and important. So if you look at how this was presented, Claude does an amazing job actually of presenting all of this information in a really nice experience. ChatGPT is probably the most bland and boring and kind of difficult to ascertain the information from. And Gemini actually does a pretty nice job. So the kind of bummer here is Claude actually presents this information really well. Gemini second best, ChatGPT. The issue is that Claude's the most wrong when it comes to the data analysis. Okay, so the question is, what are the actual numbers here? So here's our actuals. So the total number of campaigns during this period was 1203, total revenue was 960, and then our average open rate was 33.6, and the click rate was 13%. So if you actually just use that to compare, you're going to see really quickly across the board, Gemini actually has the best and most accurate data results. This is part, and it's also the most consistent as we saw. This is part of why we recommend Gemini when you're doing data analysis. So Gemini 2.5 Pro. We use ChatGPT 5 Thinking for the other one and Sonnet 4.5, for that model. But this is why we recommend Gemini for your data analysis. If we zoom out a bit here, quite literally, the other thing I'd say is, if you don't have access to Gemini, ChatGPT is definitely second best here. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, I want to do a data analysis. So this is going to be the scenario, right? So you're going, great, I want to analyze my last, 6 months of email campaigns, of flows, or of ad performance. What do I put it into? Gemini would be the first recommendation. ChatGPT would be second. Claude would be, last. If that's your only option, use it. Just kind of be aware. And in fact, use the 7 tips we're about to cover to make sure that across all of these, you've got the best data results. The reason that this is so important is because oftentimes the LLMs, when it comes to hallucinating, to kind of making up information, one place they do it often is in the numbers. So this is why it's so critical. This is why I'm covering this, is if you're doing data analysis with AI, and you should, you want to run through these tips, and you want to use the right models for it, because they're all prone to hallucinating. I will say Claude is the most prone to hallucinating. Very often in Claude, we've seen situations where we give it all of the exact numbers, and you'd think, being sort of a supercomputer in a way, it would get it right. But what often happens is we've given Claude very specific numbers, and in fact, it actually returns those numbers to us different. So we don't even say, hey, change the numbers. It oftentimes takes those same numbers and it just makes up new ones for us. We see that most with Claude. It does a great job in other areas, but again, data analysis, not so much one of them. Okay, let's jump into then, what's the 7 tips that you can use right now to make sure that you can get the highest possible data accuracy and data analysis from these LLMs. Let's jump into that. So here's your tips. All right, first up, this is going to seem maybe kind of strange, but the first one is actually so valuable and important. First is, don't use JSON. If you're not familiar with JSON, that's kind of when you'll see it where like an LLM will show something like, okay, I've got like a name and then a colon, and then quotes, and it's like name is the title of the campaign and the revenue, and then colon and quotes, and here's the revenue number. It's very long. This got popular specifically when people were frankly trying to create lead magnets around AI image generation. And they're like, oh, if you use JSON, it's just so much better. It's not always. In the case of data analysis specifically, JSON is actually worse. We've proven this out actually at my company with how we do data analysis. We switched to using CSVs, and the data quality is better. The way it does the math is more accurate, more consistently. And also, a side benefit here that's super helpful is using CSVs actually helps you not hit your limits as fast. If you're not aware of it, using things like Claude and Gemini, you actually have token limits, in your messaging in the messaging and the chats that you do. ChatGPT, not so much yet, but Claude and Gemini both have token limits. When you use JSON, it actually uses more tokens, so you hit your limits faster. If you're using the APIs, it costs you more money. Whereas with CSVs, you don't hit your limits as fast and the data is more accurate. So that's sort of your pro tip number 1, use CSVs. A CSV, if you're not familiar with it, by the way, is literally if you go to Meta and you hit export, or you go to Klaviyo or Shopify and you hit export, the CSV, that comma delimited file, is what you get sort of standard. So just use the standard stuff. Second, you saw this before, don't use relative date ranges like last 30 days. Instead, use very specific date ranges. You kind of already saw why. We'll move on to the next one. The third one is use Gemini for non-agentic analysis. Use ChatGPT for more agentic analysis. What do I mean by this? I'm talking really multi-step. So for instance, if you wanted to say, hey, ChatGPT, here's my email campaign performance, do an analysis between time A and time B, or the last 30 days, give me kind of this rundown, and then tell me what the outliers are. And then, I want a recommendation of emails that I should send in a full plan, right? The kind of, and then, that's a workflow. That's like a multi-step workflow from an agent standpoint, or how these LLMs think about it. ChatGPT is really good at that. Gemini is not as good at that yet. I think down the line they'll get there, but that's where if you don't want to break up that request, that prompt into multiple prompts, you're going to want to use ChatGPT. If you want the highest possible output, I would say use Gemini for it and just kind of do it in multiple prompts as you step through it. Okay, number 4, ask the LLM to explain what formula that it used to create, to run the calculation. This does 2 things that we've seen. One, it actually improves a little bit the amount of times it's accurate in its calculations because you're kind of forcing the LLM to think about it. 2, it also makes sure that it's telling you how it's doing the math, so that way you yourself can verify, is this in fact how it should be doing the math? In other words, and we saw this on the Gemini side, if you saw it down here. So like, is it doing a simple average or is it doing a weighted average? Right? That's a big difference in terms of what the results are going to be. Most people, when they think average, aren't probably doing a weighted average by default. So it also just helps make sure when you're seeing those numbers, you know, is it doing what you wanted it to do? 5, I mentioned the image piece. So, have the LLM describe the image and then use that in your prompts. I say this because I've seen people in data analysis take a screenshot of some data, whether that's your meta ad performance or Klaviyo performance or what have you, and drop that into the prompt. You can absolutely do that. I would just recommend basically doing a prompt first for the image, asking it to do the analysis on the image, and then taking those results and then putting that into the prompt. 1, it lets you reuse it really easily. 2, it lets you understand exactly what it's actually asking the LLM to analyze. This is also really true and effective when it comes to like ad performance. So if you ask it to analyze an ad, you can do the same thing there. Super easy to reuse, improves the accuracy and results. Okay, last 2 here. Charts and visuals. I see so many folks when they run through this analysis and they use AI to help them do the data analysis, they end up doing more work themselves than they need to, because the AI does all the analysis and then they miss the fact that you can actually have ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude literally take your analysis and turn it into charts that you can take to your CEO or your CMO, like already made for you. So like, ask it to do it. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. 7, LLMs suck at math. I know it sounds ridiculous. They're supposed to be super smart. They are not good at math. So I always like to ask the LLMs to use Python to do the math, to actually run the math. This just makes sure that it gets the proper kind of tee up and tool use in mind, so it doesn't end up kind of trying to do the math itself in some other way. And LLMs have been known to do this, especially if you're asking it a few different things. Okay. Those are your 7 tips you can take to the bank. You can use that right now, and I promise you're going to see an improvement in your data analysis results. Now, I want to show it to you live, in real time, just to give you a sense of how this works, and specifically to also show you how to get these cool chart visuals, because it's such a hack that nobody uses. All right. So I'm going to shift to ChatGPT here. You can see I've got my CSV, I've got my Klaviyo campaign data, I've used all of our tips as a whole here. I'm going to go ahead and say, great. Go ahead and run this. Now, while it's running, just to kind of as a sort of tee up here. So again, ChatGPT, the other downside with ChatGPT 5 thinking is while it's going to do this kind of agentic step. So I use ChatGPT 5 for this because again, I actually ask it to do a few different things here. It's going to take us a little bit of time. That is also a downside. So Gemini is actually faster when it comes to these results overall. In this case, I don't care as much when it comes to data analysis because, like, in my mind, the best data analysis optimizes on data accuracy first and foremost, and then kind of the thoroughness of the actual results and the report out and so on. So in this case, that's why we're doing ChatGPT 5 is for time's sake, I wanted it to be able to run through this more agentic workflow, which, as I said, it's better at. All right, so now it's spitting out some stuff. So you can see here, so now it's gone through and it's segmented the top winners, the bottom losers, the revenue outliers, the full campaign performance, and it's still going. Okay, we've got our full campaign performance. It's got a clean version. It put in nice CSVs for us. And you can see, right, so what it calculated, what it kind of went through process-wise, top revenue winners, awesome bottom performers, the core takeaway, the outliers. Again, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. Just this is more, again, as an example. It's coming up with the new angles to test. But again, this is part of why I really like to use ChatGPT for this, is you can kind of see, the agentic workflow that's going through, right? So it first segmented it all, or excuse me, first kind of sliced it up. So we've got the files that we can use for it. Then it kind of went through the full analysis. And now it's got our TLDR. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna ask it to turn this into a chart just so you can kind of see it. All right, and here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say, create a bar chart of our top and bottom performers using code with the canvas so I can preview it. So I'm gonna tee this up. Now there's a few things here just to highlight, a couple keywords that are really important. So one, like identify the kind of chart. You don't have to say that and it'll make one up, but I wanted to be specific about it. I obviously talked about which one that I wanted it to use, but our kind of core keywords here, and the reason this is important is if you don't give it these keywords, oftentimes what it does is it tries to create a graphical chart, right? So it tries to use its own image generation to create this chart, and then it's a total garbled mess. And this is honestly why most people don't realize that you can use ChatGPT and Gemini to produce great charts for you, is because by default, they lean towards image gen. So our keywords here is just to make sure, hey, it's use code, it's use the canvas so I can preview it, right? So this kind of forces it into it. This is called the canvas. So now as a result, you'll notice I can preview it in real time. So I can say great preview. It's going to run our quick survey here. And now, bingo, I've got an awesome report here. I can interact with the whole thing. So here's my top performers, my bottom performers. It's got details around it. And now I've got something awesome that I could literally take to my CMO or to my CEO and whoever I'm reporting to in that way to present. Again, this is why using AI to do your analysis is really killer and saves you time, and to actually have it give you the reports, because they end up being interactive and you can do even more awesome stuff. So if you have questions, then feel free to let me know, drop them in the comments. If there's anything else that you want to see from a data analysis standpoint, again, drop it in the comments. Happy to answer any questions there.